The first question is, how did the movement originate? What events or social problems precipitated the movement? For the gay rights movement, Henry Gerber founded the Society of Human Rights in 1924 in Chicago. This was the very first gay rights organization to be documented. About 25 years later, in 1950, the Mattachine Society was created by Harry Hay and was the first national organization. Many people consider Hayes to be the founder of the gay rights movement. A few years later, in 1955, the first lesbian rights organization in the United States was established. The Daughters of Bilitis was created in San Francisco. They hosted social events to hide from threats, violence, discrimination, and police raids. All of these organizations came to birth because during that time period, the American Psychiatric Association's diagnostic manual had listed homosexuality as a sociopathic personality disturbance in 1952. Only a year later, the movement against gay rights continued through the president at that time, who was President Eisenhower, and he signed an executive order that banned homosexuals from working in the federal government, claiming they were security risks. In July of 1961, Illinois became the first state to decriminalize homosexuality. They repealed some of the laws that were written. In the same year, the first U.S. televised documentary about homosexuality aired only in a local station in California. The biggest moment that really sparked the gay rights movement in the U.S. was the Stonewall Inn in New York City. Protests and demonstrations started and really was the catalyst for the rights. We will get into Stonewall a little deeper into our presentation. The second question is, who was the initial leader or leaders of the movement, and how did the leaders get involved? The one man who we recognize of being the huge fire starter for the modern gay rights movement, his name was Henry Hay. He also went by Harry. He grew up in England and came from a very wealthy family. But around the age 9, Harry really knew he was gay, his sexual preference, and his father absolutely would not accept his homosexuality. His dad beat him and scolded him, even sent him to his uncle's farm in Nevada to quote unquote toughen up. In about 1919, Hayes quit Stanford University and moved to Los Angeles so he could participate in theater. He then lived most of his life there and really learned that the intolerance for homosexuality wasn't just in England, it wasn't just in Nevada, it was widespread throughout the world. Hayes really was enraged and upset with how people were treating men and women who were homosexual, especially the police, who are supposed to protect and serve the citizens. So Hayes got involved in politics and for a little time wrote as a ghostwriter in Hollywood, where he met his partner, Will Greer, who later on went to be the grandpa in the show The Waltons. Greer introduced Hayes to the American Communist Party. They were married, but they didn't separated and parted their ways. Regardless of his homosexuality, Hayes actually then married his fellow Communist Party member, Anita Platke, because the party rejected gay men. There's some irony in his life. While he was in the Communist Party, he created the Messman Society in 1950. It was a network to support men who were gay. He went public with the society in 1951, and Platke divorced him. Later on, Messman actually rejected Hayes because he was a communist. Hayes really paved the road for the gay rights movement. Every day, Hayes rejected the idea that society wanted them to assimilate to their beliefs and their morals and ideology. He instead thought that we should, as a community, as a world, should accept them as individuals and give them the same rights that we expected for ourselves. He constantly pushed the envelope of acceptability. He asked questions and he took a large personal risk in it. He never chose to hide. He used his name and his face for everything that he stood for. One of my favorite findings of Harry Hayes was, out of the midst of our long oppression, we bring love for ourselves and each other, and love for the gifts that we bear. So heavy and so painful the fashioning of them, so long the road given us to travel them. A separate people, we bring a gift to celebrate each other. 'Tis a gift to be gay. Feel the pride of it.
So for the question, what were the major issues or demands of the movement? I got some major issues that I would like to talk about. The gay pride movement wanted the LGBTQIA population to legally be able to have intercourse. The sodomy law had criminalized any sexual penetration aside from vaginal intercourse, including oral and anal sex, whether between two men or two women or man and a woman. The homosexual conduct led the law led to reversal of the Bohrer versus Hardwick, a 1986 U.S. Supreme Court ruling that upheld Georgia's sodomy law. And so there was another demand for the LGBTQ population. They demanded for members of the military they want military members to be able to be open about their sexuality. In 2011, in September, they put the Don't Ask, Don't Tell law repealed, ending a ban on a gay man and lesbians from serving openly in the military. Another demand that the LGBTQIA plus population demanded was they wanted support. They wanted a president to openly support them. And that happened in May 2012. In an ABC interview, Obama became the first U.S. president to publicly support the freedom of LGBTQIA couples to marry. Another demand was the population wants the same rights regarding their spouses. In June 2013, the United States versus Windsor, the U.S. Supreme Court strikes down Section 3 of the Defense of Marriage Act, ruling that same-sex couples are able to have the same federal benefits. Okay, and so for the next question, what actions were taken by the organization to gain public notice and bring about change? So the gay pride movement demanded full rights and respect for the LGBTQ people. Gay pride has made huge progress in overcoming discrimination in the United States and many other countries around the world. So, for example, to gain public notice, there was a protest. So, in the wake of Stonewall, gay rights activists, they formed protests and marches. And also, an activist named Brenda Howard became known as the Mother of Pride because she coordinated a rally and then marched on the first anniversary of the Stonewall riots, which was the first Pride March. She put out there to have different celebrations and different Pride days in the world, in the U.S., and it just depends on which state you live in to celebrate it on a certain day. And another thing is the LGBT plus, they wanted to bring about change. So how they brought about change in the world is there are now Pride celebrations around the world. Most are held in June, but some are held in different months. Whenever people in the country experience a major milestone, there's always a celebration. So for this one, in the United States, October is sometimes celebrated as the LGBT plus History Month because National Coming Out Day is on October 11th.
What changes resulted from this social movement in society in general and in the social welfare system in particular? From the very beginning, the LGBTQ+ movement wanted to establish equality and security for all individuals, regardless of an individual's sexual or gender orientation. Due to the work of the LGBTQ+ lead organizations, societies' view on same-sex relationship began to progress over time. Awareness became even more widespread after the events of the Stonewall riots. As discussed before, it was a pivotal act in the movement which started when customers of a New York's Green Village, a bar at the Stonewall Inn, fought back against a police raid on June 27th, 1969. The Stonewall had been well known as one of the few gay-friendly spots to hang out, and a sanctuary to drag queens and homeless gay youth who weren't welcome anywhere else. The raid shattered the illusion of safety as police made all the patrons stand against the wall and show identification to prove their biological sex matched their appearance. If it didn't, the police would promptly arrest the individual. If a patron refused to share their ID, the police were reported to take them to a separate room to check. Finally, one woman by the name of Stormy DeLaverne fought back against the police, and as she was being brought to the crowd of onlookers, cried out to them, "Why don't you do something?" People decided to take action, and 3 days of rioting ensued. The riots were to protest the current conditions, as gay bars were frequently and unjustly raided by the police. This transformed the movement, as previously small and divided groups all joined forces to a similar cause. The movement caught a momentum in a similar motive, to fight for equality and basic human rights of this marginalized group. With the help of growing numbers of people fighting for the cause of equality and acceptance, several court rulings started to make way to ensure for a more inclusive society. In 1973, homosexuality is removed from the official list of mental disorders. The significance of this act is exponential, with homosexuality no longer being stigmatized as an act brought on by mental illness. It gave opportunity for more legislation to be passed that allowed LGBT plus people to protections and rights that they were denied before. In 1982, Wisconsin was the first state to outlaw discrimination based on sexual orientation. It prohibited bias for housing, employment, schooling, and public accommodations. In 2003, the Supreme Court Justice ruled that criminalizing homosexual relations is unconstitutional during the case of Lawrence versus Texas. The case went to court when, after an unsuspected raid of Lawrence's apartment resulted in his arrest. This was due to the police finding him performing sexual acts with another man and violating the homosexual conduct law, which stated that it was an offense to perform deviant acts with someone of the same sex. Lawrence appealed the case with argument that the homosexual conduct law was unconstitutional due to it being a violation of privacy under the Equal Protection Clause. The case eventually made its way to the Supreme Court, where the Justice Anthony Kennedy ruled that the law was unconstitutional due to its violation of the 14th Amendment's Due Process Clause, which protects the liberty of an individual's intimate decisions. The ruling 77 years after the movement began, homosexuality was now officially decriminalized nationwide. In November of that same year, Massachusetts Supreme Court declared that denying same-sex people the right to marry was unconstitutional. The ruling was very controversial at the time, but paved way for same-sex marriage to be legalized nationwide just a few years later. In March of 2004, the first same-sex marriage took place in Massachusetts. In 2007, the House of Representatives approved a bill promising equal rights in the workplace to an LGBTQ plus individuals. In 2015, after years of debate and several states already legalizing it prior, the Supreme Court rules that same-sex marriage should be allowed nationwide in the court ruling of Obergefell versus Hodges. There are also more resources than ever available for individuals who are struggling with their identity or are not in an environment that is accepting. Organizations such as Out Youth and the Genders and Sexual Alliance Network, the NASW, and the National Center for Transgender Equality are just a few of the dozens of organizations out there specifically designed to support people of the LGBTQIA community. Although a tremendous amount of progress has been made since the movement began, organizations and individuals are still fighting to protect their rights from being impeded on. Some basic rights aren't being acknowledged for the LGBTQ plus individuals, and individuals in the community still face discrimination. What was the role of the social work profession or individual social workers in this movement, if any? Social workers have been an understanding and accommodating allies to the LGBTQ plus people. They offer support for those who struggle with their sexual or gender orientation and offer acceptance for those who have nowhere else to turn. Social workers can be a good crutch for those who need someone to talk to, as many social workers are part of the community and can offer perspective. Organizations such as the NASW make it a focus of theirs to support the LGBTQ plus community by promoting laws and policies that support these individuals. Many social workers often take the initiative in their own personal lives to get involved in protests. The LGBTQ plus leads organizations and do what they can to help the LGBTQ promoting policies to be implemented and protect the rights of these individuals. Despite the amount of significant progress that has been made, the support of social workers and other allies is still crucial now as much as ever in the security and rights of the LGBTQ plus individuals are still being questioned and in risk of being stripped away.
So, question 7 was, why did you choose this movement, and what was your personal reaction to what you learned while researching the topic? I personally chose this topic because I have many people, many loved ones in my life that are gay. My man of honor in my wedding really has told me personal stories of the oppression that he's gone through. Sometimes I'm a little shielded from that. Living in such open-minded areas, I do forget life isn't perfect, and people are still abused and discriminated for either their beliefs, their sexual orientation, their religion, whatever it may be. I wanted to educate myself more on the whole movement and really wanted to learn how well or how far we've come so far. My personal reaction while researching about the LGBTQ plus movement was sadness at first, hearing about everything that all the struggles that people had to go through, and then it became of pride. I was so proud of those who were not afraid to stand up, to fight for themselves and fight for their friends and family and people that they didn't even know, just their community. I am excited for the future. I am really proud of how far it's come. I do think celebrities have helped this movement come into the media more. It used to not be acceptable to have gay characters on television. Now, one of the biggest names in television, Ellen DeGeneres, has her own show for many years now, and she's open about it, and she's proud about it, and just puts love back into the community. On the political spectrum, I think we still have a fairly long way to come for acceptance. To put it lightly, there's a large learning curve there. The largest events that I have been aware of during my lifetime are the ban on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the Boy Scouts of America lifting a restriction, Eric Fanning becoming the Secretary of the Army, making him the first openly gay man of a Secretary of a U.S. military branch. Obama, when he put a national monument for LGBTQ plus rights, the Stonewall National Monument, which encompasses Christopher Park. In the District of Columbia, where I used to live, you can now choose a gender-neutral option for your driver's license. Athletes and politicians are also coming out as being gay, or homosexual or lesbian, transgender. and it's more widely accepted and respected. That was my whole hope, to educate myself on seeing how far we have progressed, but also in my everyday life, how I can help those that may not have the right resources, that families may shun them for it. I know now I have a better understanding of what I can do, of how I can help, of who I can support, and how to.
And so I wanted to talk about why I chose this movement. I chose this movement because I want to increase my knowledge about the LGBTQIA plus population. At the time, which was a couple weeks ago, I was working with at-risk youth, and I have many students that are gay and that express themselves in an openly way. So having students in the LGBTQ plus community made me want to understand my students even more.
LGBTQ plus movement is important to me because I am a member of the community myself. This project has been really eye-opening because it has made me realize all the sacrifices and risks people before me had to go through in order to get to where we are now. One thing that was particularly surprising to me is that sodomy could be criminalized until 2003. It is sort of sad to know that just 15 years ago, you could be jailed and fined for simply being homosexual. It is depressing that an individual had to go through extreme lengths in order to get basic rights everyone should be entitled to. And even now, there is still pushback against the movement. I am grateful for all the progress that this movement has pushed forth in order to allow me to have the right and acceptance I do today.